Hello everyone, I am Lateralus of Team Rankstar, and today I have one of my teammates with me, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey guys, and gals, and people of all types. I am EndoZoa, also of Team Rankstar, joining Lateralus today.
And we are going to be presenting the first of a 5-part video series about the top 25 best cards in Legends as of August 27th, 2018. So this is the patch after Houses of Morrowind has been released, so the infamous Drain Vitality killer. And just to give you guys some perspective about the criteria that we used for the 25 best cards, we use a mixture of things. First, its impact on the actual meta, and how they, I guess, kind of influence deck building, and how many decks you actually see the card played in at a high level, as well as the actual impact of the card when played in an individual game. Alex or EndoZoa, would you like to talk about how we kind of came up with this list, the process that we used?
Sure. So 5 of the Team Rankstar tournament members, so myself, Lateralus, Please Don't Hack Me, and Impala Diogo, and is that everybody? Did I miss somebody?
You can call me Al.
You can call me Al. Yes. Worked on this. We each made a 50-card personal list without discussing with each other. And then I averaged them to create an aggregate top 50 list. From there, we all looked at our aggregate list, talked about where we had differences of opinion, discussed, refined the list down, and ended up with a top 25 that we were happy with.
Yeah, so we spent many hours on this. I think probably about 6 to 8 hours total on getting the list. I think we're all pretty happy with it. And before we jump straight into the top 25, we're going to talk about a few cards that I think are pretty good cards that a lot of people may be anticipating to be on the list, and rather than you just waiting to see exactly or get through the list and then be like, hey, how did they not put this card on here? We're going to go through a couple, and the first one is probably the card that we all had agreed to be 26 or maybe even on the list, and that is going to be Dombreaker. It is a unique legendary. It's a willpower's 4-cost item that says +4/+4 and summon, destroy an enemy undead. This card is pretty much played in every aggro and mid-range deck that involves yellow. It can straight up just kind of win you a game if it does actually get to use its summon effect. I think the biggest thing holding it back was there's not really a tier 1 deck that uses this in it, as well as the fact that it is a unique legendary, and about half the decks that do use it are running it in a 75-card list. So those are some of the things that kind of held it back from just making our top 25. And EndoZoa is going to talk to us about Archcannon Sirioni.
Yeah, so Archcannon is also an extremely powerful card. It's a card that Please Don't Hack Me and I both had quite high on our list, but the other members who worked on the list did not. It is very strong in a vacuum, and when it's played, its effect is very powerful. It's a 4-cost in the Tribunal house, so it's blue, yellow, and purple. It's a unique legendary. It's a 3/3, and it has summon, choose a blessing from one of the Tribunal gods, or Exalt 3, gain all 3 blessings instead. So the blessings you have to choose from, or more commonly to Exalt and get all of, are give all your other creatures +1/+1, summon a Spider Worker, which is a 0/1 with summon, draw a card, or give a friendly creature, not Archcannon, Drain and Guard. So this is a staple in various shells of Tribunal control decks, the Telesis Conscription list, the Path Mage list, the uprising lists. More vanilla Blackfall style list. And it's incredibly powerful in all of them. It's a reason for people to play things like Lana just to have duplicate copies. But it really only sees play in those shells. And even there, it doesn't necessarily warp games quite as much as some other cards. It's not a reason to be in Tribunal, although it is a very powerful reward you get for going into the colors. It doesn't just make you play Tribunal in and of itself.
By far the best Tribunal color card.
Yes, by a mile.
Perhaps the only playable one.
Yeah.
All right, so next, we have two more we're going to talk about before we jump into the top 25. And the next one is a card I thought very highly of, and that is Barrow Stalker. So this is a 2-cost endurance card, and it's a 2/3 drain guard creature. The reason I had it so high, even over some other 2-drops, is because it's so flexible. It can be played in really any kind of archetype. Like, you see it in aggro, you see it in mid-range, you see it in control. It's just a solid 2-drop that can really take control of a game early on. And yeah, so that's my main thing. I think the reason for it not quite making it is there's a lot of really good 2-drops in this game. And so this one got just kind of left out on the outside. And last but not least, EndoZoa is going to talk about Emperor's Blade.
Okay, so this is a Spell Sword card, so yellow and purple. It's a 4-cost, 4/5 guard with Slay, so whenever it kills a creature on your turn, gain 3 health. So this is also an incredibly powerful card, but not one that's able to get a ton of play because of its color restriction. Spell Sword is basically an unplayable class, so it's pretty much just limited to Rhetorun and Tribunal. One reason why this card is seen so highly is because another card that's very similar to it, very comparable, I have Defender is regarded as one of the better cards in the game, and that is a card that sometimes gets cut for Emperor's Blade, or some number of copies get cut, whereas Emperor's Blade remains as a full play set in things like Tribunal, even Rhetorun. I know Karakon Zul thought very highly of this card's effectiveness, and he was Rhetorun that he brought to QuakeCon. So this is a card that I think, again, if the colors that it goes into were seen more, might be higher in the list. It is very high power, but not quite as meta and archetype defining. Its stat line doesn't define as much of what is played as some other cards.
Yeah, and actually, just a thought real quick. Did Joe bring this in his Spellsword token deck to QuakeCon? Was it in that list?
I do not know, but I would imagine so.
Yeah, so, I guess it's in a couple of decks there, but again, yeah, like you said, not really truly meta-defining.
Yeah, it was much higher on my list than everybody else's.
Yeah, it's definitely a good card, but a lot of good cards are not making this list. So let's jump into our first card. That's going to be number 25, and that is going to be Corner Club Gambler. Now, this is Agility's 3-cost creature that is a 4/3, and it says, summon, you must discard a card. At the start of your turn, draw 2 cards, and Corner Club Gambler loses this ability. Note that it does say must, so you do have to discard a card in order to get this ability, except if you have no cards in hand. It doesn't, prevent the rest of the ability from going off. Now, I think that I actually had this as my highest ranked green card, but I was a little bit higher on it than, I think the rest of the team. I think the main reason that I have it on here is it is such a good resource extension card, as well as a lot of the times you end up playing an index that give you extra 0-cost cards or 1-cost cards like Quartermaster, Strong Pawnbroker, Curses, things of that nature, and you're kind of discarding like a half card to gain 2 cards. And I think it is, along with like Ash Berserker, one of those meta-defining cards that forces different decks to play different removal to answer this card. But I know you felt a lot different about it, so why don't you go ahead and tell us why you didn't like the card as much.
Yeah, I think the card is strong, and for transparency, I had this card at exactly 25 on my initial list, but I would have liked to have seen some of the honorable mentions over it personally. I think, like you said, I think this card is very meta-defining in the sense that its ability is very important. Anytime this card is played, whether or not it gets to draw 2, has a very large impact on who's going to win the game. However, I think that it is often too risky to really to consider to be one of the more powerful cards in the game. Like, it's a totally playable card, it's a strong card, but I don't think it comes. It really is in contention with some of the other cards in this list. It rides this awkward line where a lot of people think of it as being somewhat of an anti-aggro card because they don't have interaction to kill it, disrupt it, turn off its ability. But at the same time, against aggro, unless you're on ring, oftentimes you have, or even sometimes when you are on ring, you're forced to run shadow with it, when really in the aggro mirrors, you oftentimes need to be fighting for board. And then against control, you're going to have more silences and removal, turn off its effects, and make it actively negative. And I think you're highlighting it says you must on it, so you can't. There's no option to just play this as a vanilla 4/3. No matter what, when it comes into play, like you have to pay the cost. It's not like some abilities where you can just cancel it and say, yeah, I don't want to opt into that.
Yeah, I think the reason this card, that is really on the border now is the fall of aggro Lalu from tier 1 to tier 2. So I think it definitely would be maybe even a little bit higher if that deck was even more popular, or as popular as it was, just a month or 2 ago.
Yeah, and it is one of the stronger cards in decks like Lalu and Tempo Assassin, that kind of thing. But not as I say again. I think it is meta defining as far as it being important, but not as far as it being powerful.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to number 24, and we have Orc Captain. So this is strength 2-drop creature that is a 2/2, and it says other friendly creatures in this lane have +1/+0. This is a core card, and it's been a staple in red aggro decks and mid-range decks for pretty much ever. It's combos well with a lot of cool cards, namely like Ash Berserker, Nord Firebrand, or something even like a Iridian Necromancer. I don't think those are really played in the same deck except maybe Red Ring Conscription. But it enables a lot of trades, and it makes a lot of token generated cards like Nord Firebrands a lot more powerful. Oftentimes will represent 5 damage in a full lane, obviously. But yeah, it's been a staple for a long time.
Yeah, this card is super powerful. I mean, one other thing to note, while not everybody does, I personally don't, most competitive players do run Wood Orc Headhunters in their warrior decks, so on top of this just being a very powerful card in a vacuum, regardless of what its race was, the fact that it's an orc gives that density to the deck that it helps enable it to run a card like that. And then, the AoE strength just makes it a core card in most aggressive decks. Going wide is really important to be able to distribute your stats out. It helps you trick trades. The fact that the buff it gives is effectively charged. So you said it's very frequently a 2-mana 5/2, but I think it's important to note it's very frequently a 2-mana 5/2, or 3 of that has charge. That's a really big difference. Very powerful card.
Yeah, some very good points, especially that orc tag is pretty relevant a lot of times. All right, so let's go to number 23, and a very similar card. We have 5th Legion Trainer, and this is Willpower's 2-cost creature that is a 1/3, and when it says when you summon another creature, give it +1/+0. Now, I think the main reason that this one edged out Orc Captain was its stat line. Its body is, I think, a little bit more resilient. It doesn't die to Firebolt, and its effect kind of does spread out permanently amongst the other things. So once the effect already takes place, sometimes you have a hard time prioritizing it, where Orc Captain, you remove it, and it kind of, it can get rid of the effect on the other creatures as well. But yeah, that's I think that's the reason that it got the nod over Orc Captain here.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is a card there's actually a lot of debate on the team about where, which one to put higher. I know Will and I both had 5th Legion significantly higher. I know you had Orc Clan significantly higher initially. There's a range. I think really what it comes down to is similar as they clearly are, and as much as they fill a similar role in the decks that they're put in, like Crusader and Follow. I think they're very fundamentally different cards. And it's largely related to what you're talking about. I think Fifth Legion Trainer is a 2-drop. It's a card you play on turn 2 very frequently, or turn 1 on the ring. Like you said, it's very resilient, but it also can somewhat fight on board, and it sets up for things to be played after it. Whereas Orc Captain is more of a combat trick. It's almost like a 5-drop in the sense that you're looking to kind of play it, weave it in conjunction with another card later in the game to catch your opponent off guard using the stats you already have in play. It's comparable to like a steel scimitar, just attached to a different body. And yeah, I think, and you kind of said it, but I'll reiterate again. I think one of the really important parts about this card, as opposed to Orc Captain, is it doesn't put all your eggs in one basket. With Orc Captain, your opponent is a very clear target. If they kill Orc Captain, they remove it and all the stats it provides instantly, and it's an easy target to remove. Whereas with Fifth Legion Trainer, it inherently spreads out your threat, so there isn't one clear threat for your opponent to deal with. And particularly if they are having single target, if they're using single target removal spells or trading creatures 1-for-1, it becomes a lot harder for them to prioritize which targets to be turned.
Yeah, definitely agree, and especially on things like Ash Berserker, that staying power can be pretty important. And it does actually combo with some stuff like in TC Redoran, where, Necromancer can get a buff and you can chain some Necromancers and stuff like that. So it has a couple extra combo benefits there too. Pretty well. That, I guess Orclane kind of does that, but worth noting.
Yeah, the 2-mana 1/1 that gives stats equal to its power.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and move on to number 22. And we have yet another 2-drop, and that is Winky Sword. This is Endurance's 2-drop creature. That's a 2/2 ward. So for those coming from Hearthstone, this is Shielded Minibot, which is an insane card. And it's kind of the same thing here in Legends. It's just an insane tempo card on turn 2, or even turn 1. It can straight up kind of win you the field lane, so to speak. But it's been a staple for a while. I do think you see it a little less now because we have so many other good 2-drops that were introduced. But I think it's kind of returning, like, hey, Ald Velothi Assassin's a really cool card, but like it doesn't do quite what Windkeep can do for you. So I think it is kind of making a comeback again as well, and it's just really solid.
Yeah, I think this is a good example of just a meta-defining card. We were talking earlier about one of the main ways that we are classifying what's powerful is what shapes what other cards can see play. This card is one of the main reasons why the 2/3 stat line is almost just strictly better than the 3/2 stat line in Legends. Because cards like this exist and they see so much play, it's really important that things are able to crest over from that 2 to 3 health threshold. It's why we put Fifth Legion Trainer above Orc Captain largely. That free health bump is really, really important because of cards like this. And yeah, it's definitely a quiet card, but it's a dominant force in virtually every deck it's played in. It is it's probably the best 2-drop in Warrior, which is a class with a number of very powerful 2-drops. So
yeah, and we actually already talked about a couple of them.
Yep.
All right, so let's move on, and we're going to have our first multicolored card, and that is Monk's unique legend, Anasi. This is a 5-cost creature that is statted at a 5/5, and its summon effect is what really makes this card, and it says Anasi steals all keywords from enemy creatures. For those of you that may have just recently watched QuakeCon, you can ask Kara Console what he thinks of the card. It netted him an average of about $10,000, so this may be the single most money-winning card in the game so far. But its effect is just absolutely insane. It often can just win you the game later. Like, on curve, it can just help you take control of like the field lane or something like that. It often, with as many keywords are in this game, it often does get 1 or 2, sometimes even 3 keywords, which is pretty insane. And if it's played later, a lot of times it can just be like that finisher, so to speak.
Yeah, this definitely is amazing that this card is so high in the list, because Monk is a class that sees very little play. We do see it pop up occasionally in tournaments. Strike Monk and a ladder. Strike Monk is a real deck, and it can have some strength. But for a long time, this card has basically only been seen in Halalu, which is a tricolor deck. So it's comparable to Archcannon Ceremony that we looked at earlier as being a one-of unique legendary in a 75 card deck. And despite that restriction, it is still so impactful, so powerful in Legacy play, and so influential that it makes it to this point in our list. I think both of us actually had it even higher than this on our initial list.
Yeah,
we're big fans of the card. This card is also, can be a mirror breaker for sure. This is one of the best cards you have as Palu against other Palu decks. It's one of the best cards to help you break through board stalls, to get through guarded lanes. It's one of your best answers to Hand of Dagoth as Palu. There's just so many really.
That alone could win you the game right there.
Yeah, that alone could win you the game, and consider this this card into your opponent's Candlehearth Brawler. There's so many incredibly powerful things this can do, and particularly when these big board stalls with huge boards on either side. I mean, this can completely flip a game on its head in one fell swoop. So, yeah, super powerful card.
All right, so let's move on to number 20, and this will be our last card for this section of the video series. And we have Sorcerer's 2-cost action, Sorcerer's Negation, and this is silence a creature, then deal 2 damage to it. I was extremely high on this card. I think I rated it by far the highest out of the team. I think I had definitely had it in the top 10, close to the top 5, I believe. The reason for that being is it's just one of the premier removal spells in the game. It gets around a lot of really strong cards, such as like Daggerfall Mage for the longest time. It can do a lot of crazy things though, to like, Stormcloak Vanguard, just making that card look a little silly. But even if all else fails, it has the flexibility of just being a silence, deal 2 damage. So you can interact with the Shadow Lane, you can silence things such as Corner Club Gambler, Ash Berserker, things of that nature. Just an insanely powerful card. Does answer Windkeep Spellsword as well. And I think another big reason I had it so high on my personal list was because it's a 3-of Sorcerer and Tribunal. Like, whatever shell you're running this card. It's just that good. And I think, if anything, the classes holds it back, obviously, but this card's absolutely insane to me.
Yeah, I think this card, particularly for newer players, has a lot of quiet strength. I think when you look at a card like Anasi, you say, wow, that effect is insane. It's so powerful. It's very easy to think of the highlight reels that card can make, see how it can flip games. But I think this card is very comparable, actually, to Windkeep, which, as you mentioned, it happens to be a great answer to, in the sense that it's just always really solid. It's a solid removal spell on curve, but it's very flexible. You can use the silence to interact with word creatures and bypass them. It can also just deal with very powerful effects. It's not the perfect answer to things like Gambler that we had at 25, but you're still, in a pinch, you're happy to use it on Gambler to deny your opponent drawing 2 cards. It just has all kinds of different uses, and at 2 Magicka, it's so easy to weave into your curve that you can basically always find a pretty good use for it. And a card that you always want in your hand is a powerful card. So yeah. Well deserving of its slot.
All right, well, that will round out today's video. So we have, just a recap real fast, at 25 we had Corner Club Gambler, 24 we had Orc Clan Captain, 23 we had 5th Legion Trainer, 22 we had Windkeep Spellsword, 21 was Anasi, and 20 was Sorcerer's Negation. So the next video will be 15 through 19, and yeah, we'll keep releasing all the way up to number 1. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Do you